here from the vote today.
A social media maven and master of the digital stage.
I am so excited. I'm thriving with you. I am confident. I am determined and I'm successful.
She was fun, full of life. She did so many things. She had her hand in everything. She was amazing.
Hello, loved ones. Welcome back to Crimelight. I was thinking about what case I should do for you this week. There's constantly new options. And I've had a few requests recently that I will be getting to in due time. But I had a request, the Chris Watts case. Now this case is considered old, but the truth is cases never really grow old. There's always something new, unfortunately, in the field of crime. This one just always had a tendency to haunt me. I've studied this case like many of you have for years. It was one of those cases that's taken me a very long time to try to understand. I think I have a psychological grip on how this all went down. Now, I am not a doctor. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please go do your own research. I cannot diagnose anyone on my channel. I will let you know if I feel like somebody has particular tendencies to be leaning in a specific direction as far as like mental illness. Like I know this story like it was my own family, and I would like just listen to different doctors and psychologists and friends and family. I've seen American Murder, The Family Next Door, the Netflix documentary, which when I had a visual in my head of like pinning this whole family dynamic together from the start to the tragic death, the ending, they could not have done a better job. I have tapped into the 1,960 pages of discovery. I've listened to an audio of Chris Watts' mother's book, All My Broken Pieces. So I just know this case, but I have, much like you, had many questions through the years, like I need to understand this better. So I think that I have an understanding of how this all went. So with the help of many different psychologists on the internet and through my readings, as well as an FBI profiler and her opinion and the different books and studies that I've done, I'm just going to compile the story and give you my ultimate thoughts. I think it's going to be a great takeaway today. So if you were in this case like me and you've wanted answers for all this time, much like I did, stay tuned. We're going to talk about it start to finish, and I'm going to give you my opinion the entire way. For those of you that don't know me, welcome. I'm Chelsea J. This is my channel Crimelight. You can also find me on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts, but I am usually to be found here first and foremost with my YouTube family. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I release videos weekly, and if you end up loving the video, please be sure to like it.
If you want to message me and ask me questions about what happened or that day, go fuck yourself. Really. Read the 2,000 pages of discovery. Watch the fucking body cams. Like, it's all out there. Whether we wanted it out there or not, it's there. You've all taken it and you have done what you wanted with it. You've talked about it on groups and groups and groups. Stop being fucking basic. Like, get your own content. Make your own shit. Like, please, by all means, if you want to inspire somebody, make your own shit and inspire somebody. Quit taking hers and dissecting it and trying to figure out the why, because we're never gonna know the fucking why. Like, we're never going to. As much as we want to, we're not. I know I'm speaking for quite a few of us that were involved. We can be going about our day and trying to live our lives, because believe you me, there's not a day or a second that we don't think about it. There isn't, because we would give anything to go back and to change it, or to say something different, or to do something different, as little as it could have been if it would have changed it. But we can't.
So that right there is Nicole Atkinson, which was victim Shannan Watts, one of her dearest friends, as well as a very loyal business partner. And she is right. I really should not be here to uncover this story for mere visitation and entertainment purposes only. But really what's going on is 4 people have died in this story, and 3 being children, 1 being a mother, a wife, a daughter, a really good friend. Her husband, Christopher Watts, is in prison for the crime. Overall, the story, if anything, has received a lot of flack and lots of misunderstanding out there, to the point where it has morally dehumanized the right people, and it has nearly righted the wrong people. So I'm going to talk about the life of Shannan Watts, her two beautiful girls, her unborn son, Nico, her husband, Chris Watts, and what we saw happening on social media. But we're also going to uncover some truth onto what really might have been going on. I say might, what might have been going on, because I wasn't there. But if I was a fly on the wall. And then we're going to dive into pretty much like where the case stands now, where everybody is, how it's going, and I'm going to unravel some truth to this whole thing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the haters that are putting content and articles out there, what they're not going to tell you, what they aren't telling you. So Chris Watts murdered his family, and he is currently serving 5 life sentences plus 48 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the deaths of his wife Shannan, daughters Bella and Celeste, and his unborn child Nico. Christopher Lee Watts and Shannan Catherine Watts, also on her gravestone would be referred to as Shannan Catherine Ruzek, were both from North Carolina. My favorite! The Carolinas! Christopher was from Spring Lake and Shannan was from Aberdeen. They met in 2010 and were married in Mecklenburg County on November 3rd, 2012. Now, Shannan's family loved Chris. Her mother, Sandra Ruzek, who goes by Sandy, her husband, Frank Ruzek, and their son, Shannan's brother, Frankie, or Frank Jr. Ruzek, really loved Chris like their own.
You were from the outside looking in. She seemed to have the perfect life.
She did.
Did you believe that she was happy?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. She had her head on his lap and they were watching TV and he didn't move. He let her sleep for 4 hours. And I told her God must have sent him to you.
What did you all think of him?
Loved him.
But Chris's family did not feel the same about their daughter-in-law, Shannan. Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, in fact, did not have a good feeling about Shannan right out the gate. They decided not to attend her 2012 wedding, marrying their son, as Cindy would place the comment that her and Shannan could not see eye to eye and just could not get along. In her own words, she says, "I couldn't get along with Shannan and I did not like the way that she treated my son, Chris." And I'm gonna dive into that a little bit more at the end of the video, so stay tuned. It's really interesting what I think.
His parents went into details about the relationship problems Shannan and Chris allegedly had, but more importantly, spoke about the frustrations with his whole plea.
Are you guys frustrated with his attorneys here? Are you guys frustrated with the direction they may have put him through?
Yes, I am. I have no idea what the public, to me, that all they wanted to do was just save his life. Just save his life. Well, save his life and life in prison, to me, there's no difference. You know, he's going to die in prison, and there's no telling what will be done to him in prison. And I just want him to fight. I want him to not take this plea deal. I want him to plead not guilty to the children.
There's been some reaction about all this from Shannan's family.
Are you guys worried about some of the backlash about maybe coming out and speaking on behalf of Chris and what it might do to your guys' relationship, and speaking out like this about a woman who can't defend herself right now?
Well, Shannan, I mean, you have to get to know her to be around her. Put it that way. I mean, if he didn't kill the children, I want him to say so. Then let them prove.
I didn't want them just to save his life or to life in prison. I wanted them to have a defense. There was a defense there.
The first thing I want to say is this can happen to anyone, and it probably has happened to you because it's happened to me. For example, how Shannan's family really loved and appreciated Chris. However, on the right side, Chris's family, for example, and as fact, would not appreciate, support, or love on Shannan like their own. I mean, this can go one of two ways, okay? The first way that it can go is that Chris might have not been telling his family the best things about his wife. He might have not shed light on her positive attributes. He may have made her out to seem controlling or like she just was not a fit for him. He might have been saying those things. He might have led that kind of energy on with his friends and his family. You know, they saw something in Shannan that they really couldn't accept, didn't like it. The other could be literally that, you know, haters are gonna hate, and there is one in each family, and for some reason, Cindy Watts was a hater on her daughter-in-law. Either way, that should clear up like a lot of rumors that Shannan right out the gate was not accepted by his family. The couple had 2 daughters, Bella Marie Watts, who was born on December 17th of 2013, who was a beautiful 4-year-old, and Celeste Catherine Watts, who was known to be Cece, born on July 17th of 2015, and she was a doll, 3 years old. Now, when we found out this crime took place, I think we all did the same initial reaction. We all looked at the crime and we looked at the family and we were like, how did this happen? Because this family seemed like from the outside looking in that they had it going on. They looked like they were very blessed. In my opinion, I really think that they were. I don't think it was just the like on camera thing that made them look blessed. I think they really were. I think that they had like a really good marriage starting. I mean, it wasn't perfect because not all the family came together. I think happiness is what you make it, right? And I think that they both moved to Colorado and they started their family and they built their home, and that they were building their own line of support and happiness out there. The Watts family lived in a 5-bedroom home at 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado, which they purchased in 2013. Prior to that, Shannan had owned her own house. She had lupus and she was working through that, as well as working for a company known to be Lavelle, which sold products such as Thrive. And allegedly, she did thrive at selling Thrive products. Now, I feel like we all know this, but this is where a lot of rumors and haters came into play and gave their third-party opinions, which should never matter. But just so you know, if you don't, when you work from home, you have to have a marketing strategy. And it doesn't take a stupid person to know, working out of your home, the best way to do that is to utilize social media. I say it doesn't take a stupid person because some of these rumored haters out there will discuss how she overdid it. She was always, you know, on the internet and she never paid attention to her family. Sometimes you have to work really hard, and in those jobs, those are like tenfold harder work. That's why they're called, hate to say it, pyramid schemes, because you have to work people into your life and you're not paid to do that. You pay to start, and then those people that trust you and join you and become loyal to you, they end up paying to be a part of the business, and then you profit off of that. There's like one person at the top, and then that person takes 2 more people, and those 2 people take 3 people underneath, and that's essentially what it is. You know, the money climbs up the ladder. So you kind of want to be at the top, you know, and in order to be at the top, you have to be very committed. So you have to have a marketing strategy. You have to use the internet. You need to have as much social media as possible. Now, back then, Facebook was a thing. So Shannan was always on the internet. That is very true. She was using her company and social media frequently. Like, she would cook and she would wrap gifts and she would tell you what she was doing with her day, and she would give you an idea on how she was able to survive her 2 young girls and balance being a stay-at-home mom and, you know, earn her Lexus car and be a good wife and make these meals and, you know, own the home. Really what she was doing was trying to get you to understand that this is very possible for you. If you want those things, she's got those things. So she was on frequently doing lives and different videos and different, you know, photos of her travels and her family time. And that was something that Shannan was known for was to be a social media phenomenon. She was a constant inspiration because you could count on watching her life from afar. So if you sat in your home miserable, going to your 9-to-5 job, or, working overnights or working 2 jobs, like looking at Shannan's life, you would want what she had. Everything going on and then some. So she did everything right. Now, Chris was said to be a very handsome, smart mechanic who worked for an oil company called Anadarko Petroleum out there in Colorado. He was more the quiet guy, but a very friendly person, at least face value. Behind closed doors, the family, they're raising 2 kids, the dishes need to be done, you're tired. One of the things that Shannan actually exposed of herself was just how busy she was. Sometimes she didn't sleep that much just to make sure that the housework got done, because by daytime when the girls were up, she had things to do with the business Lavelle. So she and Chris were very determined hard workers, but unfortunately behind the scenes, they would need to file bankruptcy in 2015. And that is really tough. Like, what I was researching and listening to an FBI reporter say is that this is probably around the time that Chris started to feel very demasculated. This was supposed to be his number one job, as every man's number one job for his family is to provide, to succeed, to support, to lead. When you have to go and put it all on the line like that through bankruptcy and sign that, you're failing, you're poor, you can't afford the things that you came to do, you're not accomplishing quite as much as you were hoping to. For men, finances is a big deal. In order to go to work and to come home and have money in the bank and, a roof over your family's head and food on the table, when he signed the bankruptcy paperwork, that is when it was said to be, really starting to brew some anger. He was feeling like he was moving backwards in life, and so I've been there too. I've been there where things didn't really work out. And as a woman, that was always hard to accept. Sometimes I would cry. Sometimes, that would just sit with me for days. That would lose me sleep. That would affect how I was working. That is not a good feeling. So that's where it is said that Chris was starting to feel trapped. Now, in June of 2018, that is when things started to take a turn for the worst. Turns out that Chris had met a colleague in the office of Anadarko, and they started hooking up. They started seeing each other, which ended up one thing to another. Chris is now having an affair, and Shannan, at the same time, around the same month, ends up surprising her husband with news that she is pregnant with a 3rd child, and he is not happy about it.
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really.
That's awesome. So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome. Guess when you want to, it happens.
So I don't know if he would ever admit this, and it's all alleged, my personal opinion only, but I think when he walked in the room and he saw his wife standing there with a phone and just kind of waiting for him to walk through the door, he didn't expect her to be pregnant. So I think he thought he got caught. I think that he thought his wife was standing there with some news, and I think that he was not used to breaking the rules. He was supposed to be this really quiet, timely, fashioned, organized, very kind, thoughtful guy. I always thought when he walked in there and just froze. And analyze that situation. I always felt like he thought he got caught in his affair. And I also always felt that when he started to laugh it off, walking towards Shannan, and he seemed a little goofy, we did it again.
We did it again.
I think that was when he realized, like, this isn't what I thought it was. Okay, phew, like, you're just pregnant. That's, yeah, okay. I always thought when he picked up the test and says, so pink means a girl, I think that he was still rolling off his stupidity, you know, like trying to cover the fact that he thought he got caught at something. Like, you know, I thought she was going to tell me, like, she caught me having an affair with Nicole. Yeah, Shannan gets annoyed. You can sense it. The other thing to note is that when he says the bit in the end of that video, I guess when you want something, it happens. This is per an FBI reporter and their analysis on him. I fully back it. He never said, I guess when we want something, or I guess when I want something. He says, I guess when you want something, it happens.
Guess when you want to, it happens.
And sometimes we speak and we move and we energize in ways that are telltale signs. And I really believe, just like this FBI reporter reported in, that he was saying, this is what she wanted, this wasn't what I wanted. Now, Nicole Kessinger is the woman that Chris Watts was having an affair with behind his wife, Shannan. I'm just going to clear up this rumor right now. I have never thought that Nicole, who also goes by Nikki Kessinger, was behind the crime. I think, just like psychologists and the FBI reporter would state, that Nikki was definitely a con to it. She was definitely a motion behind the movement of tearing a family up, but not in the sense of actually ending their lives. Chris is going to this woman for comfort, away from the resentment that he's feeling for his life and everything in it at this time. Again, it is said that this kind of started back when they filed bankruptcy, you know, just kind of starting to feel like a failure, just feeling like his wife is really investing into her business and being a mother, and just kind of feeling like these feelings that he's not communicating effectively with Shannan are really building in the most negative way. Now he's got Nicole Kessinger. Like anyone that you start to have a relationship with, you know, it goes through that honeymoon stage. So this is like really buttery for him. This is different. This is cool. This is nice. He is not seen to be the failure that he feels about himself internally. And he doesn't have to internalize that anymore, because he gets to release those endorphins of feeling good again. You know, he gets to feel better because he's noticed and he's admired. And once you're married for a certain amount of time, you're not in that honeymoon phase anymore. And this would have happened later down the road with Nicole Kessinger too. In fact, in my opinion, I think it would have been worse. I think she definitely came off like a snake. I'm sorry, she did. She came off like learning about him and then figuring him out and then kind of coddling the pain, sort of acting like anything but what his life was and what his wife was. And, you know, I don't have kids and I drive a truck and I'm just a free bird and I like to hike. I love nature. You know, everything that Shannan wasn't was everything that Nicole wanted to be, because obviously Chris was avoiding his responsibilities to his wife. So he's not going to want to get involved with somebody that reminds him of his wife, you know, having kids, having responsibility. And Nicole was in the position to provide that ideation. She was in the place where she could fulfill his fantasies for that time being. And he was eating it up. Okay, he needed that in his life at the time. But I always felt like Nikki Kessinger held great potential to be a narcissist. Now, understand that I didn't say she is. I didn't say she has a diagnosis that's never been put anywhere. I felt, that's what I've said, I've always felt that she had that kind of potential. She was, in my opinion, giving Chris the full cycle within a few short months before he would actually kill his family. She was giving him ideation and idolization, like, oh, you know, I want you, you know, investing into him, traveling with him, taking pictures, giving him sex, all the things that, you know, his wife might have not been doing, which sadly I think Shannan actually was doing. I know they traveled a lot, and I read in many different places that they were intimate like all the time. That's neither here nor there, because that's actually, we'll come to find out, not what the affair was about in the first place. But she's giving him everything that he needs, and then she kind of goes like cold, a little cold, and he actually comes out and admits this, like she was really hot and cold. She would go a little cold on him and just like kind of back away and get a little spooked, you know, and then like she would come back forward, and then she would like completely try to quit this guy and then, go a little forward again. Like she was really yo-yoing with his emotions, which I don't think with the stability in his marriage, he ever experienced that before. And with that kind of behavior, if we've been in a bad relationship, then we all know that narcissists, if that's what she is, but narcissists have a tendency to really be puppet masters, and they really have a grip on us, and it's the chase for us that we go after, we stay for it, we want things to be good, and when we know they can and then they go bad, like we chase back to the good, and it becomes really unhealthy. So he was unknowingly in an unhealthy affair, but they both come out and say that the sex was like off the hook, that, she was just really filling in some void inside of him as a man. This was very distracting for Chris, and it was doing the job, even if it was toxic. It was enabling him to forget about his reality. I've always felt and thought that Nicole Kessinger was very manipulative to Chris, and in the end, when she is, questioned by authorities, she will deny all of that. She was the good guy. She, kept her distance. She didn't know about, his wife, which all, she ends up lying. She would come out and say she wasn't serious about what they had. She wanted to take it easy. She thought he was in the middle of a divorce, but factual records would show that she was looking up Shannan Watts all the way in January of 2018, and she didn't get involved with Chris until June of 2018. So she knew he was married. But, he could have been a good liar. He might have told her, like, it's going to show that I'm with this woman, but really, like, we're separating. I don't really know. That's why you shouldn't get involved with a married person in the first place. But she's looking up sex positions, wedding dresses. She is just really onto this guy. Like she's really figuring out what she needs, and she's really trying to align it with what he needs. And I really think, even though she was, in my opinion, not a part of the crime itself, I really think that she mentally drove this guy to the point of thinking, I can't live without this. I've got to have you. I desire it. Endgame, Nicole Kessinger ended up acting like an independent woman, like a baddie. But I think that she was real smitten on the new married man that she'd found, and she was pretty girly and giddy. Let's take a look at the, how she was behaving with Chris.
Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi. Call me back. Bye. Hi. It's me. You guys just call me back when you have a chance. Bye.
And let's take a look at how she carried herself when she didn't want any part to do with the murderer.
Why would you wipe out your family to be with me? This shocked me just as much as I think it shocked the rest of the world. He's so disgusting. I'm so ashamed of him.
Why? How? I don't even understand how you could, bring yourself to do that to somebody who's, that big.
I think she was real intimidated by his marriage and very, very jealous, because those are big shoes to fill. A very independent woman like Shannan, beautiful house, gorgeous kids, good wife, I think Nicole was trying to understand, why is this guy leaving this woman for me? So I think that it was competition in Nicole for her mind. I think she really totally stalked Shannan, and there was proof of that. And I think she did it because she was super jealous, and she wanted to figure Chris out and live up to whatever expectations he had, at least for the time being. She was really boosting herself up to be something that, Nicole Kessinger just simply wasn't. She was a contractor and a Darko. She really wasn't all that. And that was what pissed America off more than the affair of itself. They were like, what does he see in her? What is this? But this is where, if you look at it this way, it's going to make a lot more sense. It was never about the looks, let alone it was never about Nicole. This was merely an escape from Chris's reality and simply nothing more. Now, in about 2 months from this time that he starts this affair with Nikki Kessinger, Chris would end up murdering his entire family. But in the 2 months leading up to the actual crime of murder, Chris starts looking real good. He seems happier. He is working out. He's like in the best shape of his life. He's kind of coming through the door, like a little more confidence at night when he, leaves the job. This whole time, Shannan is kind of like, okay, we're having a third child. Like, she thinks it's like Thrive that's doing it. Her product that he had started wearing, the patches on his arm. She's thinking that this is really working for him, the product line. But really what it was his secret love affair that was bringing him life again. Really what's going on behind the scenes is Nicole Kessinger is helping Chris with his food plan because she was like a health nut. So she was into food and she's helping him and they're having all this crazy off the hook sex and, behind closed doors, and it feels good because it's a secret and it's away from his whole life. It just feels dirty, but in a good way. And he's all about it. He's writing Nicole love notes. She's looking up wedding dresses, the whole 9 yards. They're going all the way. Shannan has no idea, but that's what is behind her husband smiling again. He's doing this glow up process.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
Now, as proud of her husband as she was, Shannan also noticed, however, that her husband was starting to become he was happier, but it wasn't for her or with her. It was kind of just new happiness that seemed a little bit disconnected from the marriage. So come Father's Day in the month of June, when she found out she was pregnant and he started seeing Nicole and everything's going real sexy and good with her on the side, Shannan ends up boasting, really overkill hardcore, about what a good dude her husband is. She puts this Facebook post and she's like, this guy is my everything, without you, we can't be who we are. Says, it's you, Chris, you're who makes me who I am. We are who we are and we love you and thank you so much for everything you've done, and just goes really big on it. And it's a public post. So this is also where people were like, how did Nicole not know that he was married? Because that's what she would say in her, police report. She didn't know. She thought he was separating, but it was really clear with all of the stalking that Nicole Kessinger was doing with Shannan that she must have known. The whole world knew. Everybody knew Shannan. She was one of the top business leads. So yeah, she puts this big post out and she ends up going to North Carolina for 6 weeks, where she takes her 2 girls and she goes to visit family. Later, Chris would end up meeting up with Shannan and the girls and the family, but for now he had to stay behind allegedly because he had to work. Now, it's really important to notate this point in time what we think is going on inside the mind of Chris Watts. At this point, he's checking out of the marriage. So he wants to disconnect. He is distancing. In the 1,960 page discovery that I've been reading, it does actually say that when Shannan went away to visit family in North Carolina, that Chris and her had a lot of phone sex. But really what was going on was he was holding and being physically actually intimate with another woman while she was away with her kids and her family in another state. So by the time Chris flies out there to North Carolina, he's telling his mistress on the side that he's pretty much tolerating Shannan and that he's not going to touch her or be intimate or try to work things out. Just as a reminder, he's done with Shannan. He wants to be with Nikki, but he's got to do this for the kids, and that's what he's telling his mistress. On the side, Shannan has no idea there's a mistress. She starts to pick up hints though, because when he comes to North Carolina, he does not touch her at all. In fact, he ended up drugging her with oxycodone. He ended up drugging her, trying to get her to miscarry. Monster. So for Shannan, her husband is disconnected. He won't have sex with her, which is really unusual, especially right before he came. He was, being real phone sexy with her. But she noticed he had been different. He was struggling to really show affection, which wasn't Chris at all. Even the family on Shannan's side, Sandra Sandra and Frankie had noticed that Chris was like really more than introverted. He was just like completely turned off. He was very cold, didn't want to socialize. Like, these are his in-laws who love and accept him. This is his family and has been the people by his and Shannan's side to support their marriage and love this guy. Like, he's treating them like he doesn't know these people. He's treating his wife like she doesn't matter. He's very like disconnected from his kids. He's putting on an act and a show because she is filming and she's taking photos, but his mind is clearly somewhere else. Look at these text messages that he was sending her before he flew out. Like, oh my God, I cringe at that. Like, I would have known. Like, my detective sensor as a woman that is always wondering how and why and just like completely aware of her surroundings, like would have totally detected something is wrong with this guy. So this is like the trip from hell for Shannan. She looks bad. She feels bad. She's obviously sick. You know, he's not touching her. She's miserable, okay? And on top of it, she ends up finally just fed up with the shit, you know, especially from his family. They have never loved, never respected, and never accepted her, let alone how they're treating her children. One of her kids was, you know, allergic to nuts, and
Chris's mother, Cindy, ended up exposing one of the children who had a severe nut allergy to nuts.
Something that had to do with an allergy that could like potentially kill somebody. And Shannan was tired of it. Like, nothing pisses a mother off more than when she loves her family and you mess with the family. The family on his side could give two shits. They put her daughter at risk. Her husband is distant. She is pregnant. She's in, you know, North Carolina, away from her sanctuary of home and peace. She's done. She finally severs ties with his family. And she tells this to Chris. She says, you know what? I'm tired of this. You need to be the man for this family. And I really feel like that came from a place where, you know, for a long time, she'd been feeling like he was not there to stand up for her. He didn't have her back. She had been dealing with this weight on her shoulders. Well, for Chris, who was already having felt like he had lost his manhood after, you know, the bankruptcy, and he's got this like side click that's like making him feel real good. This obviously is pissing him off more. He had nothing really to say to it, but he wasn't supporting her. He was just like, whatever, Shannan, you know, okay, whatever you want, you know? He was done. And so if you're done with something and that thing comes back to really like annoy and antagonize you, in his mind, that's what it was, it's just gonna push him further in the dark, right? He's like, fuck her, you know, like, ugh, I want it done. To be fair, factually, why should he care? Because he's done, and he knows he's done. He doesn't want to be with Shannan anymore. He wants to start a life with Nikki. He wants to be where he feels better about himself. This isn't it, and he knows that. Now, as I've stated the entire time, and will continue to state, this was never about Shannan or their way of life. This was about how Chris was feeling about himself as a man internally, and, you know, the unhappiness that he needed to work on, and the communication that he was not working through. You know, he wasn't talking to anybody about this stuff. He was just dealing with it in a very inappropriate manner. Shannan ends up planning this getaway trip for her and Chris because she knows. She starts ordering books on how to be like, you know, emotionally connected and how to be a better person, a better wife, thinking she's going to work on herself, and she's trying to talk to him and he won't talk to her. And, you know, one of the things that he says, which proves that it wasn't about Shannan, is that he was very resentful that she was booking a trip. He hated taking trips with Shannan. He hated it. For her company, Lavelle, they would often take these trips, you know, to go out and to learn how to be better marketing. And these trips would be like in, you know, these tropical beach areas, these beautiful places. And Chris would come out later and tell authorities that based on the photos of them looking happy and connected, he's like, I just wasn't. So this leads us to the fact that Shannan had done anything and everything she could think of to save her marriage, including leaving her husband a love note about fighting for their marriage as she went on a trip for the weekend with her colleagues for Lavelle. She left for a little bit and she came back on August 13th of 2018. Now, her colleagues would say on that trip that she was devastated and very broken. She was emotionally emotionally upset and unnerved. She wasn't eating, she wasn't drinking water, she wasn't taking care of herself, and this just simply was not Shannan. She had a lot of love for her family. She's carrying a baby. They were supposed to have a gender reveal party. She had already, canceled that because she could just tell that Chris was completely checked out. Now, on that trip, it is alleged that she had conversation with her colleagues saying, he might be having an affair because, she noticed their bills were off. Looked like when he went to dinner one night, he spent twice the amount. She was like, he is so off. What is happening? And she was talking to everyone about it in her group at that point in time. They ruled out the fact that they thought he was having an affair because Shannan was just kind of saying he's introverted, he's really dedicated, and he has no game. But when she was dropped off on August 13th, 2018, from that very trip, she would come to find out the truth finally about her husband and what he was really going through. August 13th of 2018, Shannan arrives home where video footage picks up her steps to her door as her colleague Nicole Atkinson, the one who would end up catching Chris in his lies and calling the police report for Shannan missing, drops her off, and this would be the last footage that we would ever see of Shannan alive. The next footage we would ever see would be Chris carrying his deceased wife to his truck wrapped in a sheet, which was caught on the neighbor's camera a few hours after she walked to her door on that footage that we just watched. Later, when additional video footage would be revealed after Nicole Atkinson went to the home looking for her friend, making a call to report Shannan missing, Chris arrives home and he meets authorities as well as Nicole Atkinson and her son. And, this next piece of footage here is the neighbor who authorities asked if they could see his, camera that he had on his house. Chris didn't know about that when he was loading the body of his wife and his young girls into his truck early that morning. So we can see here on the footage that he is shitting his pants, thinking that he is done for because the footage is picked up that he is loading a dead body in the truck. And in other footage, we can see that he and Nicole are very resentful to each other for obvious opposite reasons. Nicole is clearly upset with Chris because she senses that he really doesn't give a damn, about what is going on with his wife. I felt like Shannan and Nicole Atkinson had a lot in common emotionally. I felt like they were both the very kind of same person, strong and driven. And so you can tell how much Shannan had lost character because she was so demeaned and so just submissive to Chris. But we can see that Nicole, who was like Shannan's normal personality when she wasn't feeling so, worthless to her husband, she doesn't tolerate it. She's like, no, this is my friend's medication in here. My friend doesn't go anywhere without her cell phone. My friend would not take off like this. My friend had a doctor's appointment. She didn't show up for that. Something's wrong. And she's picking up on the, I don't really care what happens to her anymore. I wanted her gone. She's picking up on that vibe from Shannan's own husband. So she's really upset. He's upset with her, and you can see it clearly because she's blowing his cover. Like, he finally was able to rid the problem, right? The problem in his life so he can go be with his woman on the side. This Nicole Atkinson is being nosy. She's in the way. She's calling attention to what he's just done. He hasn't had a chance to cover his crime. So his wife is buried in a shallow grave out at a site in Andarko, and his two little girls have been dumped into oil tanks, and he hasn't had a chance to prepare. It's even said on the 1,960 page discovery that day his coworkers seemed like he was awfully chipper. He had been there early that morning. He had dumped his wife in a shallow grave. He had done away with his daughters in about an 8-inch hole, which is really, you can't see on the camera, but, measure 8 inches. That's like a little bit over 6 inches, which is less than a foot. These girls are yay big, and he, was able to. Anyway, they said that morning after he had done all that he was like cracking jokes, and he was even reflecting on what he had done on Saturday night with another woman, but he didn't tell them he was with another woman. That was like the highlight of what was on his mind. He was just talking about memories with her, Nicole. So they were like, they didn't know he just killed people, let alone his own family. So they didn't think anything of it. They were just like, he never wanted to make small talk. And that he was commenting on the weather and that it was like, 8 in the morning and he was like, ooh, it's really hot. He was just being really weird, but they didn't pick up on it as weird. They just like thought he was having a good day. That's really sick and sad to look back on and realize, in his head, he was. So the other thing that they noticed was in the discovery, the two people that he was working with that day, they said that his pants were tucked into his boots, which was really abnormal for Chris. And not only that, but he was wearing a pair of old dirty boots. And Chris had just purchased himself some new boots, and he always was a clean cut kind of guy. His pant legs were always placed over the boot. So when they saw that the pant legs were inside dirty old boots, they were just like, well, hey, howdy, partner. They were just kind of poking fun at it. And he joked back, which was really abnormal for him. He usually would have hung his head and just kind of giggled. This time he like extroverted himself and he's like, oh, I just don't want to get bit by snakes. He was just making all these really weird jokes. So going back to Nicole Atkinson, he was pissed because he was having a good day up until then. He was enjoying his time thinking about his new life. He doesn't want anything to do with affiliation of his wife. So much so that when he dumped his wife in the shallow grave, he literally just kind of threw her in there and she ended up head first where her buttocks would have been facing the sky. And he didn't even have it in his heart to correct that. He didn't want to. He hated her so bad. By the time he ended her life, it was like a done deal for him. Now, also in that discovery is a statement from authorities that Shannan's mother, Sandy, had called in and reported that she had a bad feeling that her son-in-law had done something to her daughter. She requested that they would check his GPS in his truck. And I had never heard that before until I read the discovery. On Dr. Phil, she did say that she had a spiritual visitation from Shannan and the girls the night that Shannan had died. And I'm going to be honest with you, I believe it.
What did they say to me when they came to see me?
Have they?
Yes.
And what did Cece say?
The first night when they found Shannan's body. I'm going to be honest with you, Dr. Phil. I was laying in the bed weeping so hard, talking to God, and I said, I could just end my life now and go find my daughter. I had fallen asleep. The next morning, I get a phone call, and they found Shannan's body. I said, do you want me to identify her on the phone? And he said, yeah, you could do that. And I said, is she beautiful? He said, yes. I said, does she have black hair? And he said, yes. And I said, then you have my daughter. That night, I was laying in bed and I just felt a presence. And I heard my daughter, I felt her and I heard her say, I love you, Mommy, and I'm sorry. She told me she was at peace. I finally fell asleep with my daughter at my presence and she slept with me. I just felt her.
The worst thing that Chris could have done besides give a polygraph test and not have a lawyer present, which he does, and we'll learn about that in a minute, he gets on TV and he decides to call attention to himself in the worst way, looking for his family, talking about them in past tense, and mentioning that, he wants everybody to come home in a very stereotypical way, like really just not into it. And at that point in time, America, the whole nation knew that he was behind it.
What's your wife's name?
Shannan. S-H-A-N-A-N-N.
What's your kids?
Bella and Celeste.
How do you spell Celeste?
C-E-L-E-S-T-E.
How old are your daughters?
4, Bella's 4, Celeste is 3.
Do you think she just took off? Do you think?
I mean, right now I don't even want to just throw anything out there. I hope that she's somewhere safe right now and with the kids. But I mean, could she just taken off? I don't know. But if somebody has her and they're not safe, I want them back now. That's what's in my head. If they're safe right now, they're gonna come back. But if they're not safe right now, that's the not knowing part. If they're not safe, last night I had every light in the house on. I was hoping that I would just ran over by the kids running in the door and just barrel rushing me, but it didn't happen. And it was just a traumatic night trying to be here.
I'm gonna ask some kind of tough questions about your relationship with your kids.
Yeah, my kids are my life. I mean, those smiles light up my life. And just last night, during when they usually eat dinner, it was just I miss them. I miss telling them, hey, you got to eat that or you're not going to get your dessert, you know, and just like, you're not going to get your snack after. I miss that. Like, I miss them, you know, cuddle up on their couches. They have like a Minnie Mouse couch and a Sophia couch that they cuddle up on and watch, you know, Bubble Guppies or something. And it was just like, you know, it was tearing me apart last night, and I needed that. I needed that last night, and for nobody to be here last night and to go into their rooms and know that I wasn't going to turn the rain machines on, and I know that I wasn't going to turn their monitor on, and know I wasn't going to kiss them to bed tonight. It was that's why last night was just horrible. I couldn't do it. I want everybody to just come home. Like, wherever they're at, come home. That's what I want.
And that night, that day she was back,
I left work early that morning, like 5:15, 5:30. So like she barely gotten into bed pretty much.
And this might be a tough question, but did you guys get into an argument before she left?
It wasn't like an argument. We had an emotional conversation, but I'll leave it at that. But I just want them back. I just want them to come back. If they are safe, they're coming back. But if they're not, this has got to stop. Like, somebody has to come forward.
Have you spoken to her family, like her parents, the sheriffs, or your neighbors? Is anybody? What's police saying to you?
Right now, this is what they're doing right now is with the canines in the sense. I think this is the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing they've done so far, because yesterday the Frederick Police Department did all the searching of the house and tried to gather whatever information they could.
And my last question, if you have any of them, so feel free to step in. My last question is, if your wife can see this, if she can watch this, what would you like to tell your wife and your kids?
Shannan, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back.
That's it. I can take that mic off you.
So as I stated, the second stupidest thing that he did was talk to authorities and work with them willingly without a lawyer present. Good that he did it, but to take a polygraph test, willingly. And they did a really good job, because what they ended up doing was the polygraph people, the authorities, they told him, if you are guilty, you should leave. You shouldn't be here. You should get out of that chair and you should walk out. If you know what happened to your wife and kids, we're gonna find out. If you're guilty and you stay, we're about to find that out too. Really dumb for him to go in and say, I'll do it. I think he had a people pleaser side to him. I think that's how he was in his marriage. And he had this woman of authority telling him like, hey, you should come take a polygraph test if you want to, prove your innocence. I almost think that he just did that willingly. Might have thought he could beat the system. I don't know, but the other side of me thinks that he just did it because he was so used to kind of just doing what Shannan wanted, in the marriage. He never spoke up for himself. So I think that he was just scared and moving minute by minute, trying to make himself the victim. But yeah, that's what they did. They put him in the corner and they said, we don't feel sorry for you. We're here to do business. And yeah, you should leave if you have something that you're hiding. So regarding the authorities' investigation, at first Chris admitted nothing and he went overboard on lying about everything. And then he ended up coming out and he said, okay, fine, I killed her, but it's because I saw her murdering my two daughters. He said that he saw that through the baby monitor in the other room, and so he went in, he got mad, he snapped, and that he strangled his wife. Later, he would end up testifying and admitting guilt to killing all three of his children and his wife. The thing is, Chris Watts did not snap. That's been the biggest thing of all time about the case. In the book that was written by his pen pal Sherilyn Cadle, she wrote a book after the crime. She wrote him back and forth, and it's called Letters from Christopher. She takes the letters of admission that he writes and promises him, let me write your book, and I promise you in return that I will get your story truthfully and safely out there. And they had an agreement that that's what she would do. There really isn't a whole lot of juice in this book, but there is indication and great detail concerning the night that he murdered his family. In the book, he admits how it was for him, how he felt, and what he was witnessing witnessing when he wrapped his hands around his wife, and he says, I couldn't let go. Something forced him, evil inside of him, to just continue doing it. And he says, you know, how he saw her go out. He explains the physical death of Shannan. He also discusses that he ends up backing his truck into the driveway of the home because Shannan didn't like when he would pull his truck into the home. You know, she didn't want it in the driveway or in the garage because the garage made noise and the girls were like light sleepers when they slept upstairs. So he says that that was a huge giveaway for him too. You know, when the neighbor had the camera and it picked up on him backing the truck up, he talks about why he didn't usually do that and why he did that morning. He also discusses in the book that he tried to murder his 2 daughters allegedly first, and that he smothered them so that way he could have time left with murdering Shannan without any interruption. He does say that they woke back up and that he was strangling his wife, and they had come into the room and they asked what was wrong with Shannan, what's wrong with mommy. He discusses that they looked black and blue. He talks about in the letters how he put Shannan, who was wrapped in a sheet, at the floorboard of his daughter's feet while they were in the back of the truck riding the 45-minute drive from home to the oil tank fields where his place of work was. Can you imagine having your mother riding underneath your feet, like dead? Ugh. This is also where he discusses murdering his daughters, how he ended up smothering them. One daughter fought back. There were symptoms of trauma after she watched her sister die. Also after she had ridden in the truck with her deceased mother. I mean, imagine the energy, the spiritual energy coming from that truck while your father is driving you to your gravesite. And he does admit that he feels his daughters knew after he dumped Shannan's body that they were next. Chris Watts has been sentenced again, as a reminder, to 5 life sentences, 3 consecutive and 2 concurrent without the possibility of parole. He received an additional 48 years for the unlawful deceased body. His sentence had began immediately. There has been talk and rumors about Chris Watts hanging pictures of his family up in his cell to remember them. There have been people who have come out, both men and women, stating that they were having affairs with Chris before the Nikki incident. I've seen them all. I've seen the interviews, both men and women, of people coming out talking about having sex with Chris when Shannan and him were married from dating sites. I don't buy into that because I don't think that Chris Watts was trying to cheat on his wife. I think that Chris Watts was trying to run away from the void that he was filling. And I don't think that he knew how to deal with that properly or appropriately until he became groomed and flattered by his mistress, Nicole. And that was a very easy approach because they had to see each other every day at work. So this was her way of being able to like get into a small, inviting friendship with him where they would end up finally connecting, flirting, finally seeing each other, hooking up, and becoming the real thing. I think it was leading up to that. I did not in my heart ever for one time think that Chris Watts was bisexual and trying to go out and discover his sexuality and get off. I think he had a lot of sex with his wife. Obviously, she became pregnant. I don't think that was the problem. I think that Chris Watts needed something more than feeling demeaned in his life from the time that they filed bankruptcy to the moment his wife severed ties with his mother to how he felt she was investing in social media more than she was into him in their real life, the forced traveling that they had, the responsibilities of 2 girls and financially incapable to give what they need because of bankruptcy, the big house that they had that he claimed he hated so much. Just, I think it all got to him. I don't think he was looking for a hit it and quit it kind of thing. I think he didn't even look to have an affair. I think it came along, dropped in his lap, he made some bad choices, and that is where the darkness and the resentment and the anger began to grow like a cancer until it finally ate him up, and he ended up planning and plotting the murders of his family so he could never lose the way that this felt for him. He actually comes out and says, I killed her because I was scared that she was going to take me away from Nikki. Nikki is his place of escape. You understand? It was never about Nikki. It was never about how she looked. It was less about how the sex was. It wasn't about how below his wife she was. It was never about that. That is the answer to this case, in my opinion, and per a lot of research. It was not about how beautiful of the house he had, the beautiful pictures his family and him took, how beautiful or driven his wife was. He could have lived in a shack with an ugly woman as his wife, somebody that was a couch potato, and still felt a void to be drawn to something else that made him feel like a better man. That's what it was about. Just because they all had a high-class life and Nikki wasn't as high-tech, high-class, as driven or pretty as Shannan, it was never about that. In my opinion, it has always been about getting away from something inside of Chris. Something that turned on his wife, turned on his family. And that is the other thing about this case. Why did he kill the children? Why didn't he spare their lives? I mean, he could have just harmed Shannan, right? Like, he hated her. I don't think Chris hated his children. I think that he's amongst a lot of people that go after their kids because there is some kind of connection through the children that connects to something that reminds him or still makes him feel inadequate. They are still a symbolism of responsibility. They are a spitting image of a woman that he, in the end, truly, truly hated, his wife, Shannan. They are a reminder of life that he cannot continue to have, or the happiness or the freedom that he's trying to find with his side chick, Nicole. That is why studies would say that he went after his children, because they were in the way too. So all of this has to do with just Chris. And I think that's why America took to this case so heavy, because that is a hard thing to understand, that someone can be so empty and they can turn on their family. And from us, we determine what the outside looked like, you know, like it looked good. She's so pretty. The kids were great. Like, why? You know, it had a lot to do with what was going on with that guy. And this was not a snap. He even came out and said, I tucked my girls in, and that was going to be the last time that I would ever tuck my girls in again. Truth is, the situation in his life was shit. And it was actually more a reflection of how he saw life. He saw life through his eyes, things that people would be grateful for every day. To have a beautiful wife and a beautiful home and healthy kids. He saw that as shit, and he didn't want to deal with it appropriately. Because guess what? People have kids every day. People have zero in the bank all the time. There are millions and millions of people all over the place that file bankruptcy. It's a thing. Lots of women are bold and tell their husbands what they need. You know, people indicated that this was something that assumed Shannan to be a control freak. I think personally Shannan just liked things to be organized, and she wanted to be a support system to her husband and her kids. And for her, she might have had a little bit of an OCD problem, but that's, you know, at the time what worked for Shannan. That's what worked for their family dynamic. But lots of people have those kinds of marriages, and it doesn't give somebody the right to take someone else's life just because they're feeling overwhelmed internally. Chris had a responsibility to himself and his family. He should have been dealing with these things. Has nothing to do with if Shannan was a narcissist or if Nicole was pretty enough or the house was big enough or, you know, any of that. It's the hole in his heart. It's the way that he saw his life. And it's the fact that he never communicated to anybody how he was feeling. He just took it and ran with it, and he went way too far. And I don't know what he thought. I don't know how he personally thought he was ever going to get away with this. The truth is, the way that he sank his daughters in the oil tanks, I don't know about Shannan's body, but he could have very well maybe gotten away with this crime. It's hard to say if Nicole Kessinger would have actually stayed with him in knowing that his family was just missing and he was just ready to move on, because that's what it seemed like he was about to do. Like, they're missing, but yeah, I don't know, want to go hiking? I don't know that she would have went for that either. She was a little bit narcissistic in my opinion, but I don't know. I don't know how narcissistic that would have been, you know, for her to say, yeah, you know, let's just move on like nothing happened. Right now, Shannan's family are fighting with lawyers to have their peace, because ever since this has happened, they have been a target for attack and for just a lot of hypocrisy, and there's been a lot of conspiracies that have gone around against her family. I wish that people would shut the hell up and just stop. This isn't fair. This was their daughter and, you know, their sister. This is not right for YouTubers to go on, content creators, and to make assumptions and be monetized and make money off of those assumptions. I've gone around and I've tried to report some of these people, and actually YouTube won't allow that. And I've heard that through Sandra Ruzick that they have tried to report these people, and YouTube wants content creators to be able to have a little bit of a First Amendment. So seeing as to how it's opinionated most of the time, they won't really do anything about it. But I don't know. It's not right. I think the family should be left to be in peace. And I think that I believe her mother, when her mother said she spiritually felt like something happened to her daughter, they weren't even in the same state, you guys. This family was in North Carolina when Shannan was murdered in Colorado. So there's just no way that they could have known this was going to be the end. There's no way they knew that the North Carolina 6-week trip was the last time they would ever hold their grandbabies or hug their daughter or their sister. So this is just really sick and sad. I think we should stop attacking Shannan, because I don't think this was anything to do with Shannan or a reflection of Shannan. I think she has passed away at the hands of her husband, who was fed the hell up with his life, and she is gone. She has died. Can we let her and the babies rest in peace? Are we capable? Do we have to dehumanize who we are and be monstrous and say things that we shouldn't be saying and make a point we shouldn't be making for a buck? Now, the people that have bought the house have also come out with a statement. The house, yes, finally sold, and I'm very happy for the family. It's a little creepy, but, you know, is that something you would do? Would you own that house for a good price? Because it's the house that people died in. Well, there's a family that has bought that house, and allegedly they have 3 kids and they are married too. So people are sick, and they've come up with these really weird, twisted conspiracy theories about how this is a Shannan wannabe, and that, you know, the woman who would own a house like that would happen to take care of herself the way Shannan liked to take care of herself. And so that means that she's Shannan number 2. Okay, please shut up. Really? The woman has come out, the new homeowner, and she said she worked very hard all her life and always wanted a dream house like this, and she doesn't want anything to do with being named Shannan number 2. In fact, she asked, just like Shannan's family, to please leave Shannan and her family alone, as well as leaving the new homeowner and her family alone as well. She says that she's very proud to honor Shannan by living in the house, and she has a spiritual promise to Shannan that she will take very good care of the things that Shannan would have, you know, had the rest of her life, even though it was cut short. She says because of it, she will replace the energy in that home with something very positive and very good. Now, what has become of Chris's family, Cindy and Ronnie Watts? Chris also has a sister, but there hasn't been too much media on her. It sounds like she did the right thing, kind of laid low. Now, Cindy has come out with a book, and it's called All My Broken Pieces. And in respects to Cindy, she has lost her son, okay? And she's lost her daughter-in-law and her grandbabies as well. So I don't want to like be dehumanizing myself here by saying that that doesn't count. But I was very disappointed in the book, All My Broken Pieces, that came out. When I listened to the audio of it, I thought it was very disrespectful to Shannan. I thought it was really demeaning to her grandchildren. And I think that she really is trying very hard to keep hold of her baby boy, her son, and just kind of believe that there's a part of him that, you know, is better than this. But the truth is, if he was better than this, then he would have been better than this. He's not. He did it. He's a murderer. I believe that having no relationship and severed ties with your daughter-in-law before she would be murdered by your son ought to be enough. Now, while I think it's healthy to get out your feelings and, you know, to be able to talk about these things, I don't know that like coming out with a book on your feelings for your son was the most appropriate thing to do, considering how Shannan went out, considering how you lost your grandbabies. It was had a very narcissistic energy to it. It was a lot about how she was made to feel as the mother-in-law, kind of like she was the biggest victim of them all. Like, it was super interesting, not to lie, you know, it was. Like, she mentions that Shannan, which is abbreviated, allegedly suggested that Christopher abbreviate his name so they could have like a little more in common. Like, she wanted him to be named Christopher, but she's very sarcastic and rude about it. I really feel like, even though it's interesting, I don't think there was a point of even coming out about that. For example, you know, like, it's completely irrelevant. I think it was her way to show that Shannan was like really controlling, so much so that she was trying to change her husband's name. I don't know how much I believe that, to be honest. I didn't ever feel that energy from watching Shannan on lives or any of her videos. She just seems like really genuine to me. Now, to wrap this video up, I wanted to mention that the reason this has inspired me so much in my life is because I really felt like I could resonate with Shannan, and in some weird ways, Shannan has actually motivated me to be a better woman. In learning about Shannan's life and her existence, I don't know that I ever would have known about her had I not known about the tragedy. But in knowing about the tragedy, I actually learned a lot from Shannan. She would cook. Her mother holds a YouTube channel as well, where she makes some of Shannan's favorite dishes, and I've made one of them. But it inspires me, you know, she has a clean house. She's a good mom. Like, she's a driven woman, and she's a little OCD, and sometimes she was a little demeaning of her husband, but I think those are like natural slip-ups for every woman. Like, if you go to my husband and ask him if I'm a freak about cleaning the house, or if there's been a time or two that I might have hurt his feelings by saying I want it this way and I really don't care, he's gonna say, yeah, that exists. He's probably gonna laugh because he can relate so much. But nobody's perfect. I feel like everybody looked at Shannan and expected her to have perfection. She was so clean and so neat and so tidy and so successful. Like, you know, she thought she was perfect. Like, no, she didn't. She cared. She was really there. She was an excellent wife. In Cindy Watts' book, she actually says that Shannan was a fraud. She actually says that Shannan had paid for those trips that her and Chris would go on, and that she was leasing the Lexus. You know, this was all smoke and mirrors. But in the end, I think that Shannan actually was a very successful Lavelle seller. I think that it's not really our business how she got on those trips. I think that she felt good on the product, she believed in them, and she wanted you to as well. So in a large way, Shannan has influenced my life, and there have been times that I'll go watch her videos just for a little inspiration. I think she was a wonderful person and certainly gone too soon. Shannan was replaced by Nikki Kessinger in her marriage, and that is something that we cannot deny or live down. To highlight any of Shannan's flaws, we really need to see this story the way that it went and the way that it is. In the end of Shannan's life, that she was an excellent wife and she did everything that she could think of. It was to her demise that she would die because Chris simply did not want to work out his marriage, and he chose the very sad, hard, terrible way to end his marriage and his own life, as well as his 2 daughters and his son. It's been said that Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts have been in contact ever since Nicole Kessinger went into the witness protection program, moved states, protected herself after her reputation as the side whore, and that she has a new name, a new life. Everything's just new for her. She was able to reset and start over. I don't know for a fact if she has talked in codes or not. He tells Sherilyn Cadle in her book that they have. Twisted Sick. Late last year, there was an article coming out about how Chris has a lot of female attention in prison, and he is feeling pretty good about himself these days regarding all of that affection and the nudes and the sexy photos that he gets from women, the I love yous and you were never understoods, just the coddling and the victimization. He's eating it up. So if you're one of the jerks that's writing Shannan's husband in prison telling him that he didn't deserve what he got, shut up. Go away, you're gross, and you should stop. Be a normal human. This guy does not deserve your love and affection. He has done nothing but kill 4 people to get where he's at. There is no real need to coddle him. He is a criminal serving the rest of his life behind prison bars. That is the story of Chris Watts. I thank you so much for tuning in. I know this was a long one, but I hope that you were able to get a good takeaway from it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week for another video. I'm Chelsea J. Crimelight out.